training was probably the biggest thing that limited the growth in my company. It was a head game for me too. I couldn't grow. I knew why I needed to grow. I didn't train. I knew that I needed to train. I didn't have a process. I knew that I needed a process. I kind of beat myself up over it. I hid behind not being able to find good people. All of that head trash that I had was just beliefs that only existed in my head.
Hey there, it's Jeff Luther, and you are diving into the podcast for the Service Business Blueprint. This is where I walk with you and help you unlock the secrets to building a thriving service-based business. We talk about everything from starting out to setting milestones in your company you didn't even know would exist. We'll cover entrepreneurship, personal growth, mindset, everything you need for success in your service-based business. You ready to build that blueprint?
All right, welcome back to the Service Business Blueprint, where we share tools, tips, and strategies to achieve your personal and business goals and help overcome mindset obstacles. I'm your host, Jeff Luther, and I'm going to share some of my painful lessons in growing my business today. Some of the things I learned along the way, and I say painful, they weren't really painful at the time, but now looking back, I came up with the list of 5 things that limited my growth the most over the last 20 years. These are only painful in hindsight. So looking back now doesn't feel very good. The idea here, I'm passionate about helping home service businesses grow. My hope here is that you can identify some of these patterns now or be prepared to avoid them when you start seeing them in the future. I love to learn from people's mistakes. I have a method that's like, I call it kind of rip off and deploy or rip off and duplicate, which is if someone's already done it, why reinvent the wheel? So I look at mistakes the same way. When you get a coach or you get a mentor or you get someone that's been there and done that before, that eliminates a large portion of what I call the dumb tax. And there are a lot of things that I did in growing my business that I paid a hefty price in the dumb tax. I grew a business from $0 to $3.5 million. It took me a little over 20 years to do it, but I can tell you it took me, 17 years to hit 1 million. So you got to think from 17 to 22, I more than doubled the revenue of the company. And that word revenue, I want you to hang on to that one, maybe write it down, because we'll talk a little bit more about revenue. So the reason I came up with this is I was going through and doing some Instagram reels on our page the other day, and I needed to come up with 5 different reels to set up for someone so that they could go ahead and set our posts out into the future. And I was coming up with different ideas, and I don't know if any of you are trying to get an online presence or trying to do your own thing, doing reels, doing short videos, shorts or clips. But sometimes when it's on demand and someone's wanting you to come up with 5, 6, 7, 8 things, it's hard to come up with things right there in the moment sequentially. You might have 1 or 2 good ideas, but I had to come up with 5. And I was kind of racking my brain trying to come up with the 5 things I was going to propose or going to record for this person to set up those advanced postings. And I just was like, all right, what's the 5 hardest things I've done in my business? And so I named 1 or 2, and I was like, wait a second. What are the 5 things I look back at now and think, wow, I really would have done that differently if I knew then what I know now? And it would have propelled the growth of my company much faster than I was able to do without. So I'll just go through them individually. Number 1 was thinking small. Now, I don't mean thinking small like I just want to grow this business to 200,000 or 500,000, but I really believed small. Maybe that's a better way to put it. I believed small. And I will tell you from my experience, a lot of this in business is mindset or limiting beliefs or just belief in general. And I believed my company was small. I remember my very first real hire. I put an ad on Craigslist, actually, if anyone still remembers posting ads on Craigslist. But I put an ad on Craigslist. I had interviews set up, but I thought so little of my company and our office that I would not interview folks at our office. I would interview them at a coffee shop. I had bought a duplex a few doors up from from our house there at the time in Atlanta. And I rented half of it out, and then the other half I had converted into an office. But it was, just a little duplex in an in-town neighborhood in Atlanta. And I won't say I was ashamed of it, but I certainly wasn't proud of it. And I didn't want people coming there to interview because I thought they would think lesser of the company. That was my own belief, my own projection. So we met at a coffee shop. When I finally hired someone, it was 2 interviews, both at a coffee shop. When she started, the day of orientation was actually, and I say orientation, believe me, it was not orientation. I am trying to paint a very pretty picture here. It was first day on the job. This is what's going to happen. I got to go, see you later. I've got inspections to do. But the first day she met me at the office and she was like, oh my gosh, I love this place. This is great. It's going to be a great place to work. I'm close to everything. This is comfortable. I've got all-street parking. So that was what I projected onto the people I was interviewing, that they would think less of the company because of the location. And I always thought small. I believed small. Like, this is just this tiny little company. Hey, I'd really love for you to come work for us, but, I understand because we're just this tiny outfit. Probably won't amount to much, but, if you want to come work here, we'd love to have you. And you probably won't have a career here because we're just not career oriented. And that was kind of the tone that I set, where in the back of my mind, what I really wanted was that bigger company that could provide really great careers and help people grow and develop and be worth more out in the job market than when they left the company than when they showed up. That's what I wanted, but I was scared to convey that, or scared to have that belief because of the way I would get judged, when really that was all just my own head trash. Here's what I would do different. I would share the vision externally that I had internally. Overcome that fear, overcome that limiting belief, and then get excited. Get excited for them. Get excited for their ability to grow. Be excited for yourself, and be excited that now you're in control to help this person grow and develop, not only for themselves, but now you want this person to grow and develop for your organization as well. And the way that I put it, like, I've been pushed out of a lot of jobs in my organization over the years. As people could do things better than I could do them, it made sense for me to step aside and let them do their thing. And I came to the realization that really my job was to make people better when they left than when they showed up. The idea was align the goals of the company with what the goals of the people are, the people that you were going to hire, and then things would naturally progress on their own, right? So if someone comes to you and says, hey, I want to be able to type 90 words a minute, I can only type 60, and they're in an admin role, or they're in maybe even, a sales role where they're doing social networking or marketing or anything like that, it makes sense that we get them to where they can type 90 words a minute for their own improvement. But the organization, the company, gets to enjoy that ride all the way up. So that was the first thing, thinking small. And these are not in any order of severity, just kind of chronologically. The second thing that I would do different, the second thing that really limited the growth of my company early on, was I never set myself up with a salary. What I would do is I would take what was left over at the end of every month, and that's what I would pay myself. Now, this had more of an impact on my personal life, like on me personally, and of course my family, than it did on the business. But it was hard to budget. If I didn't know exactly what I needed from the company every month, then it was hard to figure out what we could budget for the remaining things that we needed every month. And I can tell you, when you're taking what's left over at the end of every month, sometimes when you get to the end of the month, there's a lot more month left over than there is money. Some of you know what I'm talking about. But I couldn't set a proper budget. Think about this. If you're doing $250,000 a year in revenue, and then your salary requirement is $100,000, then you're taking 40% just for yourself in the entire revenue of the company. That's a lot, because your payroll is going to end up being about 50-60% of revenue, total payroll, generally speaking. Now, some businesses are different. But that's quite a bit of the revenue of the company. Not a whole lot left over for your marketing, not a lot left over for, just hiring folks. Once you get up into the upper echelon of hiring folks in that $250,000 range, you're probably going to be spending about 10% of that, if not more, just to hire that person. So think about those numbers and work backwards. So if you don't have yourself set up on a salary, then you're going to have a hard time budgeting. Now, it's okay, of course, to take distributions, and you may want to do those quarterly, maybe even go out further and do them twice a year. But when you do have funds left over, I'm not saying don't take them. Be very careful about that being the only way that you have your salary set up. Number 3, and I think this might have been one of the bigger pain points, and I think I certainly could have accelerated the growth of the company had I taken care of this early on. I didn't know it when I was in it, so I hope that this resonates with at least one person out there. But I had no training process. Now, I knew how to train. I knew how to train additional inspectors. That was the hard part, was training inspectors. That is the longest lead time in my business. I knew how to train, and I trained well, but I had no system in place. So it was a challenge once I started training people, and I relied a lot on circumstance. But also, now we're back to those limiting beliefs, right? I was scared that I was going to miss something in the training, and then they would be, then I would have that whole, oh gosh, well, I forget the word. It's like a common, it escapes me. But I was scared that I would miss something in training, and then they would think that I wasn't as good as I thought I was. Imposter syndrome. Yeah, where they would think, they would realize that I was a fraud as an inspector because I'd missed an issue or missed something in the training. I made excuses that I couldn't find good people, and that's why I didn't hire. I blamed it on outside influence or outside sources, when really what it was, I was lazy, if you're going to call a spade a spade. Training was way harder than it should have been, and I was lazy about it. I knew I needed to write and document and follow a process, and didn't do it. I would always look for the easy hire. Training was way harder than it should have been. So I would look for that person that had the technical ability already, because then I wouldn't have to train that piece. I could also go back to them and say, oh, well, you told me that you already knew this. So it was a bit of a scapegoat, and it really was laziness. I can tell you this now, looking back, always hire on personality, because you can never, ever, ever train someone to not be an asshole. I overlooked personality issues. I overlooked character flaws. I overlooked things that didn't align with my values if they had the technical ability, and that was a huge mistake. So training was probably the biggest thing that limited the growth in my company. It was a head game for me too. I couldn't grow. I knew why I needed to grow. I didn't train. I knew that I needed to train. I didn't have a process. I knew that I needed a process. I kind of beat myself up over it. I hid behind not being able to find good people. All of that head trash that I had was just beliefs that only existed in my head. Another one, which is more of a regret than probably a problem, but I had no true path for growth. And as I've started to coach other businesses, I realized what a bottleneck that was. How that limited my business, not only in the people side of it to get good folks, but also if you give people a clear path. People love to be led, right? But give them a clear path that they're in control of, they'll go into a burning building for you or for the company. So I came from a corporate background. I'd hire folks, and it was customary for me just to do annual raises. We'd chug along for a year and then do an annual raise. Here's your 4%, 8%, 2%, whatever it was. I didn't have to face the whole issue of addressing people that weren't doing well. I didn't have to give away the farm, what I felt like anyway, which is not true. But they had no opportunity for responsibility, no opportunity for accountability, no opportunity really in the direction of the company or in the success or the failure of the company. But like I said, people love to be led, but they want to be in control of their own destiny. So once you give them that clear path and let them take charge, it's amazing what they'll do on their own. A lot of times as business owners, we don't have that trust, or we don't give them that latitude. And when we take that from them, we're taking away an opportunity for them, taking away an opportunity for ourselves, and taking away an opportunity for the organization, which means taking away opportunities for a lot of other people, your customers, your referral sources, as well as the other employees. So not having a clear path for growth for the folks in the organization was a big one. Number 5, when I started to get to that $1 million mark, I genuinely worried more about revenue than I did about profit. I worried about how much money was coming in the door and did not care about how much money was going out. I am not bragging about that. That was a terrible way to run a business. But so many measurements are around revenue or annual sales. Like the sales price of a company, what people sold a company for, which usually is relevant to what their revenue is. Think about stocks, market cap of a stock, what the stock is at, what the company is actually worth, what a company sold for. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. Margins get thin. There's a risk of buying business. And what I mean by buying business is when you're actually doing business at a loss. I don't mean you literally bought business, but that's what you end up doing. When you're operating at a loss, you are buying a job, essentially, when you start buying business. Margins get thin. It takes the fun out of the business, takes the fun out of being a business owner. It also can take the fun out of being a customer for the business. Think about that. If you're operating on razor thin margins, then you're worried all the time. There's some of you out there that know what I'm talking about right now, probably. And I remember being there in my business. Everything was just such a big deal when you're on razor thin margins. But it's funny, there's so many different things that you can do to improve profit immediately without feeling much pain at all. A 1% adjustment just in your sale price does wonders. But if you're on razor thin margins, you may start to resent customers. You may start to resent employees. You may start to resent people that are referring you business. If they're referring you business that continues to cause that margin to be super thin, you may start resenting them. Don't do those people that disservice by operating on razor thin margins. When you're worried too much about revenue, everything else suffers. I promise. So much better to cut the revenue, increase the profit margin, and then build back slowly from there. When we do people that disservice of resenting them because of the way we operate our organization, we're not setting ourselves up for a very successful future. So those are my top 5 things. Those are the things that limited the growth of the company the most. That was thinking small or believing small, viewing my company as this tiny little outfit when really that might not have been the reality outwardly. Be excited. Be excited about the growth of the company. Be excited about the opportunity. Be excited that you are in control of your destiny. Number 2, I did not set myself up for a salary. I took what was left over. Budgeting for the company was hard. Budgeting for my family was hard. Would not recommend doing that. Number 3, probably the biggest limitation to the early growth of my company was having no training process. So there was no good way to hire additional folks to expand the bandwidth of the company so that I could do more business. Number 4, no true path for growth for people. I'd hire them and they would just chug along, and I gave them no real true path for growth. That is just a missed opportunity to help people develop, help people be better. That's what's fun. And number 5, I worried way too much about revenue, and profit took a back seat to revenue, which is really just foolish if you think about that. You're only in a business to turn a profit, even not-for-profits. They're only in a business to make money. The word profit just means different things to different organizations. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Service Business Blueprint. Again, I'm Jeff Luther. I'm your host. I love being here. This is so fun. If you've enjoyed today's discussion, please subscribe. And if you would, leave a review when you get time. Stay tuned for more insights and stories from the world of business. And until next time, I can't wait to see you. So keep evolving, keep grinding it out. And if there's anything I can do to help, if you want me to elaborate on any of these topics, send me a message. And please click the link below and subscribe. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for hanging out on the Service Business Blueprint with me, Jeff Luther. Stay in the loop as we keep delivering these strategies to supercharge your service business. Hit subscribe, leave a review, be part of our growing community. Now you have someone to walk with you as we create your service business blueprint. Until next time, remember, where you focus is where your energy goes. Beliefs turn to things, so choose the good ones.